I'm Busy Rieger, and I'm doing another of my series, Choosing Fear or Knowing, and it's March 28th, 2020. This one is titled Disclosures Are Being Trumpeted Each Day, and and I'm going to go into more detail in how you notice and the decoding of what's being said, in this case particularly of President Trump, but all sorts of information that's coming out, and how different audiences are being spoken to. But I just wanted to give you some highlights or call attention, have you notice some highlights from yesterday's presser, and some points that I think are very interesting, dots to highlight and illuminate for you. One of the things I want to mention too, I believe this is the second day that President Trump has changed up the way that they organize and run the pressers, with all of the mainstream, lamestream media saying, well, we're not going to carry his press conferences anymore because he's able to refute their lies. He's able to refute their fake news pretty much right away. And that's one of the highlights I'll have in for the presser I was talking about for yesterday. So since then, I believe that was Wednesday, the 25th? And so he's changed it up now. He begins the presser as he had, with some remarks. He takes some questions, and then if someone has a question for some of the other members of the task force behind him, he says, well, just hold that question and we'll get back to that. And then he does his piece and gets the information out and does take questions, and then says thank you very much, and he leaves, and then the rest of the panel and the team is there to answer other questions. So it strikes me as a way to do what he's always been doing. He somehow, people can say, well, he's talking directly to us. It's important. The president is taking charge and speaking directly to the people of the United States and the world. And then turning it over to the team, so there's no conflagration between that. So I think that's a part of a method to assuage the lamestream media. But more to the point, to have his information, the signals and the conversations and the dots he's giving, the numerous audiences that he's speaking to, not commingled with other things, so that they're a little easier to pull out. Okay, so in this one, and these kind of, just highlighting a few, one of the clips, the last one I'm going to mention, I put on the IUV because I pulled out, that's pretty important. But in the, towards the middle, a gentleman was asking him, a reporter was asking him, what would he say to kids? If what would you have to say to that? And he gave a great quote, and you can go listen to that and look on our Twitter feed. You've got that for IUV. But I wanted to pull out a couple things that I think are very telling. He said he reassured kids and gave a real father answer. But he said, we were attacked. We have to win this and win the war. And this is the dot. Ultimately, we are doing it for them, the children. Ultimately, we are doing it for them. So if you know even a smidge of what's really going on, you'll see bringing that out, highlighting that is a huge step of bringing the battle, bringing, the war, the perceived war, out into the public eye. It's no longer hidden, and it's also signaling that the enemy will no longer be hidden for long. He then went on to say, and he was referencing back his call with President Xi from the night before the night of the 26th, he said it's an incredible phenomenon that it doesn't attack kids. That it, meaning the virus, when he was in this context was speaking to it, doesn't attack kids. It doesn't, because it wasn't designed that way. It wasn't programmed to attack kids. Kids are a far more valuable commodity, and you don't want to waste their fear. This is the way that the Illuminati, deep state, however you want to describe it, described in many different ways, consider it, view it. And so it's also helpful if you have parents who do get sick and the kids are there. You want the kids in good shape so that you can do what your plans are for them. And that's a whole other conversation. Then he also, in that, a thing I wanted to highlight is that when he was talking to President Xi, he was talking about the cures. And that would be a game changer. I believe it was at the beginning in his opening remarks before he took questions in this particular press conference that he talked about the virus just disappearing. And then he mentioned just disappearing one other time. He may have done it the 27th and the 26th, but I'm pretty certain he did it the 27th as well. May have been both times, but I know he did it the 27th. So some of these dots are important for noticing how he's using specific words, what he's really saying, and how each audience that he has would take that. And I'll go in more in depth about who the actual audiences are in another little short video. But the virus disappearing, it's an important dot. I'll leave it at that. And the fact that he uses the word disappear. So then he's also referring to a question a female journalist had asked him, that he's talked about that this virus affects older Americans, and do you think it's wise for you, context was you're an old guy, to go out to Virginia and see off the ship? And the ship they're talking about is the Comfort, and the Mercy is already in LA. Interesting presser that Gavin Newsom gave about that, and again, the way that his information, his communication, his demeanor of giving information is different, it's changed. And I would say you could read plea deal there as well. But President Trump's response was that he thought it was important for him to go there, just a short little trip to send an important message and a thank you. That the leader of the U.S. the United States send an important message, and a thank you to the whole crew with the ship going off. And again, we'll get into more things, but look around. You can start to do this research for yourself if you don't already know, and if you have an idea, do more research about what these dots are, about the different things, about the ships, what they're really there to do, what they are going to do. And that I'll follow up. This was new as I was finishing these notes before I turned on the camera. President Trump had just tweeted this morning, so that I'm doing this on the 28th, that he's considering quarantine and I would say, you could do subtext to prevent a runner or runners from the different areas, and no, not runners with the coronavirus, but runners of those who have been taken down, those who are being contained. So he's considering a quarantine for the, in quotes, hotspots of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So again, that ties back to if the ship is going to get there on Monday, to New York to avail itself of some of these people who may be running, that would be a good thing to send the tweet out. That he's talking to the general public with that tweet. He's talking to very specific audience, i.e. the runners, and he's talking to those who are awake and aware to what's going on. So I wanted to finish up the last part. This dot I think is very important. Noah is very important. And I want to preface it by saying, and kind of a little backstory to all the other dots I've just given you. Remember that the way I would say it, President Trump still has to use marketing language that connects to what people understand, or what would be, even though he trumpets in his own way presidentially, that people would somehow think it goes with the norm that's come before of giving a press conference or president's remarks or something like that. And so he can't spell everything out right this minute. There will be a time, I'm certain of it, that things will be greatly spelled out. But he has to couch his language. He's got to kind of give a little here and a little there, and for those who are paying attention, and noticing, you can pick up different things. You can clearly see and sense and feel what a phrase means, as we've done in the decoding. Just on its face, linear, black ink on white paper, meaning is, and then all of the other meanings given what's really going on. And when you understand all the context of that, what he says sounds totally different than if you have no clue and you just think, it's this scary, chaotic time with the coronavirus. So that's really important to mention. And I feel he does have a very good grasp of everything that's going on. I mean, all the nuances. Some of it may be new to him, especially since he was fully involved in the run for presidency and all of that. But nonetheless, he has, and internally and energetically, he has a command of all of it. But his, the linear being has a command. So for me, it's exciting because now we're starting to get in a from the podium of the President of the United States to information above the fold. So the real story, the real headline of what is being unfolded here. John Roberts from Fox News asked him a question about an interesting, no one's asked where is the money coming from. This is the closest kind of thing about talking about where the money's coming from, although that wasn't at all the question that John Roberts asked. He wanted to know, that this huge phase 3 had been passed. It's interesting, it's called the different phases, and that again is under talk, cross talk, data point talk about the operations, phases of operations that are going on with the cleanup, with the containment, with the final battle in the war of the unseen enemy. But John Roberts asked the question, we've just barely finished phase 3 and $2.2 trillion, enough to choke a herd of horses. Money, he said enough. He said it was enough money to choke a herd of horses. And so in President Trump's response to that question, and he talks about the actual question and answers that, and talks about phase 4 that's coming. And so again, he's signaling, because in this slightly before that, there was the question about, are you going to see the ship off? And it's important to see the ship off, and they finished way ahead of schedule. So if you pay attention to the dots will line up and draw this beautiful picture on so many different levels that will illuminate for you. Anyways, in the response, he goes on to talk about the money, and you'll have to go. You can listen to the short clip I pulled out, but because the words are, it struck me, the words aren't that familiar to him, or to phrase them that way. But one of them, he's talking about, we can do this. It's no big deal. This amount of money is no big deal. We can do this because of who we are, what we are. We are the ones. It's our currency. You know? So he's starting to lay the ground and prep for a number of things. The reveal in totality of the financial slavery system, the reveal in totality of the truth of who we are, the reveal of, although he may not do all of that, he may just do a little bit of it, because people are doing it for themselves. You don't need President Trump or anybody else, or me, or anybody else to tell you that. It's going on because you're connected to Source. But the reveal of that we are the value. Each being is the value, and we are the currency. And in this, I think you can go back and look, future will prove the past, that this was the very first beginnings of the signal in this location, at the podium, at, a presidential address, presser from the White House, that he's starting to lay the groundwork for giving this information, using this languaging that we're the value. And it is no problem. The amount of money, it doesn't in terms of amount of money, because we're unlimited. So from this particular thing, just from the 27th, just quickly looking at it, listening to it, these were the highlights. There were others, but these were the highlights I wanted to bring forward. And, if you don't necessarily have the time or the inclination to watch the pressers, that's fine. But they're fascinating if you do. You can also look on Twitter, IUV Twitter feed, any Twitter feed, but the IUV Twitter feed. I pull out certain ones people will make, as I did, clips, and so highlight those. You can also go to whitehouse.gov and their news section, and every day that there's a press conference, they have a transcript of what everybody said. So what a reporter asked a question, and anybody on the coronavirus team, what their answer was, what President Trump's remarks were, what his answer was. So it's all right there, so you can scan to something, scan to an area. If you've noticed a dot and you want to go back, if somebody's mentioned something, if you hear it on a video that I've done, you can just pull out those transcripts and scan that part. So I would finish this little piece by saying there's a lot going on. There has a lot been going on for eons. And many of us have been following and fully in it for a long, long time. And many more have been coming in, noticing, being involved in their mission and what they're being asked to do, what they've agreed to do for a while now. And now it's particularly exciting because people are tuning in to themselves, tuning into their knowing, tuning into the truth of who they are, and waking up. And the vibration exponentially rises every moment that everyone does even just a little. And when they do it full-throated and wholeheartedly, it's enormous. It's spectacular. So notice those dots. There's a lot of conversations going on all different levels. And each of us, our multidimensionality is coming out all over the place. I love you.